Phones, Netflix, food on demand. Think we've got it best today? But history had some you'd die to live in, others you'd sprint back from. Let's see which era you would choose.
Athens, 5th century BC.
You blink against the blinding sun and bam, you're standing in ancient Athens. The air is hot and dusty, but the central square is buzzing like a street festival. Hundreds of men pack into a circle, shouting, waving their arms like it's a verbal mosh pit. One yells, "Justice is everything." Another screams back, "No, freedom is what matters." This isn't a fish market. It's the birth of democracy. You push your way in. Here's the shocker. Every free male citizen, rich or poor, gets a say. No degree, no blue check, no TikTok following required. You raise your hand, and suddenly, people are actually listening. Feels like becoming an influencer overnight. You sit with a group sipping wine, debating whether the soul is immortal. Laughter erupts between arguments. Someone nods toward a scruffy guy asking endless questions. Socrates, driving everyone crazy. Off in the distance, Plato is scribbling notes while Aristotle explains why goats can reason. It's chaotic, loud, and oddly thrilling. But then you notice something missing. Women. None. A girl passes by and is yanked inside, the door slamming shut. No voice, no wine, no public life. For them, Athens is less paradise and more a never-ending kitchen. And the slaves? You spot them hauling jars of water, shoulders sagging, eyes on the ground. In this so-called free world, they have zero freedom. Athens, cradle of ideas, art, and philosophy. A golden age, but only if you're a free man. For everyone else, it's just a prison with wine on tap.
Pax Romana, 1st century AD.
You step out into Rome at the height of the Pax Romana. The place is massive, stone streets packed with people, carts rattling by, stalls overflowing like a never-ending street fair. This is the empire's longest stretch of peace, and it shows. You look up, buildings the size of mountains, domes soaring into the sky, gods carved in marble staring down at you. Citizens stroll around in flowing white togas like extras from a historical drama. In the forum, merchants brag. Spices from India, silk from China, grain from Egypt. Thanks to peace, trade is booming. You could feast on Syrian fruit and Mediterranean fish without ever leaving town. Then smell, overpowering, sour, like the whole city is rotting. And in a way, it is. Streets choked with waste, animal carcasses, and way too many sweaty bodies crammed together. Rome may be grand, but it stinks like hell. Curious, you duck into a public toilet. Big mistake. 40 stone seats lined up side by side, no walls, no privacy. Men casually chat politics while doing their business. It's basically the ancient version of a group chat, but with butts. And it's not all marble and wine. You watch slaves in chains dragged into the Colosseum, forced to fight animals for the crowd's entertainment. Pax Romana. Peace, sure, but only if you're a Roman citizen. On one side, glittering trade, breathtaking architecture, centuries of peace. On the other, stench, blood, injustice. Rome was great, no doubt. But would you really want to live in a paradise with no bathroom doors?
The Italian Renaissance, 14th to 16th century.
The time machine jolts again. Boom! And you're in Florence, Italy. The air smells like fresh bread. Church bells echo through the streets. And everywhere you look are paintings, statues, and colors splashed across the walls. This is the Renaissance. Europe's glow-up after the nightmare of the plague. You glance around and nearly choke. That scruffy old guy with a hammer? Michelangelo, chiseling a giant block of marble into the David. Over there, the long-haired dude slapping paint on a church wall? Leonardo da Vinci, doodling concept art for the future. Patrons throw money at them like they're rock stars with Renaissance sugar daddies. Later, you slide into a banquet hosted by the Medici family. The table stretches forever, covered in silk, groaning with wine, roasted meat, towers of fruit. One plate could feed an entire village. Nobles lounge, laughing, chatting about art, science, and politics like it's all just like dinner conversation. But outside that window, crowds of peasants chewing stale bread, eyes hollow. They'll never get through those doors. The Renaissance shines, sure, but mostly for the rich. And women? You spot a young girl trying to join a painting workshop. She's smart, talented, eager, but she's shoved aside, told her place is in the kitchen. An age that birthed geniuses also erased half of them from history. You sip your wine, music swirling around you, and wonder, would you be lucky enough to end up as a Michelangelo? Or just another nameless servant sweeping under the banquet table?
Ancient Egypt, 1100 BC.
Towering pyramids rise into the sky, blocks stacked like Lego for giants. The Nile glitters nearby, feeding green fields in the middle of the desert. Welcome to ancient Egypt. Mysterious, advanced, almost unbelievable. You step inside a modest home. On the table, a tiny jar of toothpaste. Ingredients: salt, mint, ash, and iris flower. Yup, Egyptians brushed their teeth thousands of years ago. A woman smiles and hands you a honey lozenge, basically ancient breath mints. You chew, shocked that fresh breath has been around for 3,000 years. Further in, you find doctors scribbling on papyrus scrolls. One prescribes lotus flowers for depression, another stitches up a wound. And over in the corner, someone's actually performing skull surgery, and the patient survives. Brain surgery in the age of pyramids? Wild. But the biggest surprise? Women here have rights. They can own land, file for divorce, even work as doctors, priests, or merchants. A female priestess strides past, commanding respect like a top official. Before you start packing your bags, reality slaps you. Out by the pyramids, slaves collapse under the sun, whipped as they drag stone blocks bigger than cars. They fall, get shouted at, and no one calls them human. Egypt's glory was built on the sweat and blood of thousands who never got a choice. At sunset, you stand before the massive Sphinx, shadows stretching across the desert. If you were free, this might feel like paradise. But if you were a slave, would you even survive your first summer?
The Mali Empire, 13th to 15th century.
Drums pound, dust swirls, and you step through the gates of Timbuktu. Right away, you're floored. A bustling city in the middle of the desert, massive libraries, schools, markets bursting with gold and salt. This is the heart of the Mali Empire, one of the richest kingdoms in medieval history. You trail behind a caravan of merchants. Piles of shimmering gold glitter like sand dunes. Towers of pure white salt stack higher than walls. Someone whispers, King Mansa Musa controls it all. He's so rich, just taking a vacation crashed the Middle Eastern economy. Forget Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. Musa made them look broke. Crowds suddenly surge. Word spreads, the king is coming. Musa rides by on a camel, tossing chunks of gold to the ground like it's candy at a parade. People scramble, eyes glowing. You can't help but laugh. Ancient party favors were literally gold bars. But not everything shines. In the shadows, you see slaves bound in chains, sold within sight of those golden mountains. Ordinary people trade with cowrie shells or specks of gold dust because giant bars are basically useless for daily life. The desert sun blazes down, sweat stings your eyes, your throat feels like sandpaper. Then a scholar waves you into a library where thousands of manuscripts are preserved, knowledge spanning science, law, and philosophy. You touch a fragile page, thinking life in Mali could mean swimming in wealth and wisdom, or fighting to survive the heat and injustice. Which side would you end up on?
The Polynesian Voyagers, pre-European era.
Waves crash around you, endless blue stretching in every direction. A massive wooden canoe slices through the water, packed with muscular rowers paddling in perfect rhythm. You've just landed in the world of the Polynesians, the original masters of the sea. You climb aboard. No compass, no maps. The chief points to the stars, reading the night sky like he's scrolling through Google Maps. A younger sailor tosses palm leaves into the water, watching how they twist to read the currents. It's basically GPS, powered by instinct. At night, the crew feasts on grilled fish, tropical fruit, and sweet coconut water. It feels like the biggest picnic in the middle of nowhere. Storytellers boast of ancestors who sailed thousands of miles, discovering Hawaii, New Zealand, and Easter Island, long before Europeans even figured out what an ocean was. They ended up learning navigation from us. But the ocean doesn't always play nice. Out of nowhere, waves as tall as buildings slam against the canoe. The boat lurches. Spray stings your face. No land in sight. No shelter. One storm could wipe everyone out. You spot children clinging to their mothers, eyes wide with fear. Life here is part adventure, part gamble with nature. And then the mystery. After centuries of exploration, the Polynesians suddenly stopped expanding. No one knows why. Storms, famine, curses from the gods. You stare at the horizon, where the sea and sky blur together, and wonder, would you be brave enough to spend your entire life adrift, guided only by the stars?
Baghdad's Golden Age, 8th century.
You step into Baghdad and your jaw drops. The city gleams like a jewel in the desert. The Tigris River shimmers. Stone bridges arc across the water. Markets buzz with shouts, and Arabic poetry drifts through the air. Welcome to the Islamic Golden Age. You follow the crowd into a grand building, the House of Wisdom. Inside, it's basically the Library of Congress mixed with a startup hub. Scholars scribble furiously, translating Aristotle, Euclid, and Hippocrates into Arabic. One smiles and says, "We don't just preserve knowledge, we make more of it." He shows you a star chart, numbers written in, you guessed it, Arabic numerals you still use today. As you wander the halls, you spot a surgeon operating on an eye, a mathematician sketching out algebra, and an astronomer mapping a comet's path. It feels like Silicon Valley, but with turbans and papyrus. Outside, the streets smell of roasted coffee.
People gather in cafes to read poetry, strum the oud, and argue philosophy. You take a sip of the bitter brew and realize the drink powering your all-nighters was born right here. But not everyone gets a seat at the table. Women and slaves are shut out. In a dark alley, a man is beaten for debt, while the poor shuffle past libraries they'll never enter. Baghdad dazzles with light, music, and knowledge, but beneath it, inequality runs deep. You glance back at the House of Wisdom and wonder, would you be one of the scholars inside, or just another bystander, staring at golden walls you'll never touch?
The Inca Empire, 15th century. The air is thin and icy, hitting your lungs like needles. You're high in the Andes, mountains stacked like giants, clouds drifting below your feet. Across the slopes, golden terraces stretch for miles. This is the Inca Empire, where humans turned entire mountains into farmland. You follow a crew along a perfectly paved stone road, zigzagging across cliffs. The Inca road system spans tens of thousands of miles, basically the interstate highways of the ancient world. A runner sprints past, clutching a pouch. These are the empire's mail carriers, covering miles on foot every day. No horses, no wheels, just lungs of steel. Soon you enter a massive storage depot. Piles of corn, potatoes, quinoa, all stockpiled for the people, ready to be handed out in times of famine. An old farmer, here, nobody starves. It feels like stepping into a logistics system run by nature's best project managers. But then, the shine fades. You see villagers straining under giant stone blocks, building palaces for the emperor. Faces dripping with sweat, backs bent, and no pay, it's all forced labor. Drums pound in the distance. A crowd gathers. In the center, a trembling boy stands before priests holding ceremonial knives. The crowd chants as your stomach knots. That night, you perch on Machu Picchu. Mist curls around stone walls, glowing under the moonlight. It's breathtaking, but the question lingers. In the Inca world, would you live well-fed and safe, or end up as a laborer, or worse, a sacrifice? Song Dynasty China, 11th century. The streets buzz with life. Lanterns glow red overhead, canals are crammed with trading boats, and tea houses overflow with chatter. You've landed in the Song Dynasty, one of the most powerful economies of the medieval world. At the market, merchants aren't dealing in silver or gold. Instead, they hand over paper money, an invention way ahead of its time. A flimsy sheet that buys you piles of goods. It's basically the first offline Venmo. Nearby, workers crank out books with woodblock printing. Knowledge spreads beyond nobles down to everyday people. On the wall hangs a crude cannon, the first appearance of gunpowder. A scholar grins. This will change warfare forever. You shiver, knowing he's right. By night, you drift down the Grand Canal on a boat, music floating in the air, lanterns rippling on the water. It feels like a mini Shanghai, centuries before Shanghai existed. But then you see something darker. A young girl's feet are bound so tightly in cloth they've twisted into permanent deformity. She winces in pain as elders praise her. Beautiful. Refined. In the middle of a golden age, women are shackled by a brutal standard. The Song Dynasty sparkles with trade, science, and art. Yet for many, especially women, it's a gilded cage. You stare across the glowing water and wonder, would you be a wealthy merchant or someone trapped, unable to walk freely for life? So you've just traveled through 9 golden eras of history, from philosophy in Athens and Roman peace to Renaissance art, Mali's wealth, Polynesian voyages, Baghdad's wisdom, Inca roads, and the Song Dynasty's brilliant inventions. Each era had its glow, but also its shadows. Freedom mixed with inequality, wealth built on hardship, beauty paired with cruelty. History has never been one-sided. What felt like paradise for some could be a living hell for others. Now it's your turn. If you had to choose, which era would you live in?